I'm Barbie and this is Aquaman, and today we're going to talk to you about tent camping. First, we're going to start with Aquaman telling you how to find the perfect location for your tent.
When you're looking for a tent location, you want to try to find some place that's relatively flat on the ground. No rocks, no tree branches, no limbs or any kind. You don't want them poking you. You also don't want any area that the water might be running off on under your tent or into your tent. So try to pick a relatively level spot, good distance away from trees. You don't want them blowing and scraping your tent, knocking your tent over. If it's got some trees around it, that might be all right as a little wind block, but not up there close or anything.
Okay, and now we'll show you the different parts of a tent. Your tent will usually come in a bag or a box, so you're going to want to unzip that first and get everything out and kind of take an inventory to make sure you have it all. The big piece is typically the tent itself. This, if it comes with something like this, is usually something that goes inside the tent for little pockets to store things in. You can just set that aside, you don't need that instantly. This will be your tent pole or poles. Depending on the type of tent you get will depend on how many of these they'll come with. They'll also typically come with tent stakes. These are metal stakes, but you can also buy the plastic ones that they sell in at like Walmart and Academy and all those places, and those work as well too if you lose these or bend them or they get rusted and don't work anymore. And then it will usually have a piece of plastic in it, vinyl, plastic, kind of like this. It's big, and it's the tent fly that will cover your tent to keep moisture from affecting your tent and leaking into your tent. Now this tent that we're about to set up is what's called an insta tent. They're pretty relatively new. They go up super quick, super easy. You can literally do it just one person, but it's best if you have two. So we'll get that set up now. If you have an Insta tent, it literally goes up this quick, and then you just need to make sure you have all the legs pulled out and go ahead and stake them in the ground.
Best to push your stakes in, start on one corner and work your way around the tent. So as you're pulling it tight, your tent is stretched the right way. And they just usually poke them just directly in the ground with your hands.
If you're finding it hard to poke the stakes into the ground, you can use something like you could use a hammer, but that'll tend to bend metal stakes and it could break plastic ones. It's best to get a rubber mallet and kind of have that as your tent gear to use to put your tent stakes in. But if the ground's soft, they go in just super easy and you're all set. Now this Insta tent does come with a standard tent type pole in that it's connected, it's all folded up like this, and it's connected with an elastic string, and you just snap it all in place. This one has this type of pole because it has a porch to it, essentially, and that's what goes in this part to set the tent up.
Tents, when they have the fiberglass extension poles, they'll always have a little piece of your tent that they slide. This one, it's just at the top. Some of them may start down at the bottom and come up. You're going to want to make sure that you're continuously pushing your tent poles through and not pulling them back, because if you pull back, you make them come apart and it might be kind of hard to get them back together inside the groove that it goes through.
And you don't want anyone on the other side pulling it because that will pull them apart as well. So you just kind of want to help them guide through the other side if you're helping.
When you get done putting your tent through, down at the bottom, there's a spot that you can put it in. It's a little grommet, usually on most of them. You see that grommet? And your tent pole will just slide right into that grommet. When you have your pole through, connect your little clips. And then down on the corner, there will be spots for your tent stakes. And when you're putting, if your tent has a porch, it's best to have it untied and zipped so you can make sure your door will shut. Some of the tents come with actual ties. This one comes with the little latch tie. Oops. And you'll just pull it out, push your stakes in.
Now, while it might look like it's done, we're not yet because we've got to put the rain fly.
The strings that are on your tent or your fly are for stabilization. And you're just going to stretch them out of foot traffic. You don't want them coming directly in front of your door. Stake them in the ground. And then make them to where they're somewhat tight. You don't want them super tight, but you do want them to where they're going to hold the flap for your tent. And you would go along with your tent and you'd put each one of them in the ground. And that helps when the wind's blowing to keep your tent from doing a lot of shaking. And then most tents in the center of it will have a little loop that you can hang some sort of little battery operated light of some kind. Little loop you can hang a battery light off of. One of the little compartments that you can hang in. All your windows. This is a summer tent. Your windows zip down. If it's really nice and cool, you can take the rain fly off and have the air blowing through. And that's the pop-up tent.
This tent here is also an Insta tent. We already have it set up, but if you'll notice, it doesn't have a rain fly on it. And the reason being is this is a WeatherTech tent that is rated for cold weather, and it doesn't need the rain fly because there's no net on the top. I don't know if you can see, it's got a solid top instead of having the net like the other tent did before we put the fly.
It's got small vents, so if it does get warm, you can open them up. And then the other difference is on your windows, instead of having an open top, your windows will zip all the way around to keep the heat in. Now when storing a tent or taking one down, you're going to do the exact opposite. After you've swept the inside out, you're just going to go through and take it down exactly the same way you put it up in reverse.
And you want to make sure you always sweep your tent out. And if necessary, if you've had your tent up for a number of days and maybe it's been extra windy and there's dust and stuff on the outside, you may want to lightly sweep the outside too, just to keep your tent as clean as possible. That'll make it last a lot longer.
And try not to put it up if it's been wet outside or if you have heavy dews. Wait until the afternoon when the dew's gone. That way your tent's dry when you put it up. You don't want it to mold or mildew.
If you do have to put it up when it's wet, be sure that you take it out of the bag as soon as you can and let it air out and dry completely before you store it for a long period of time.
want to try to fold it in an easy way for you to unpack it again the next time.
When you take your tent down, it's best to, if you've got the windows zipped up, to unzip them a little bit. That lets the air out as you fold your tent back up. Same thing with your door. You probably want to go ahead and unzip it and roll it up like I have.
Remove the pole, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to push it one direction.
Once you're clear of the tent, just pull each part and fold back on itself.
You'll go around, make sure you remove all your tent stakes.
And with this insta tent, you just hit the buttons and bring each side down.
Insta tent, the legs will fold up. Lay it down and roll it together.
Now I know a lot of times it's hard to get things back in the same box or same bag they came in, but it is possible. Sometimes you just have to shove and tighten and roll a little different and get it all back in your bag.
And a lot of your bags will have an expanding bottom just for this reason. You'll unzip it and it gives it an extra inch or two.
So if you're struggling with your tent, getting it back in the bag, you can unzip that pocket, put it in, get the tent all in the bag, and you'll be set to go. Now this final tent we have is more of a traditional tent in that it's not an insta tent. It has the poles that have to be slid through to stand it up entirely. It is a 20 foot by 10 foot 3-room tent, so it's large and it's going to take us a bit of time to put it up. That's the tent part. That's the rain fly. And that's the bag with all the poles in it. A traditional tent will come with a bag with the poles in it like this. And the stakes are in it as well. The easiest way to put one of these up is to separate your poles first, because you'll notice some of them are thin and smaller around, and others are thicker poles. The tent, probably when you buy it new, comes with instructions that'll tell you exactly which poles go where. But if you've lost those instructions and don't have them, the best thing you can do is separate your poles like this. See how many you have of each kind, each length, each type. Because even these, while they may all look alike, will be different lengths. And this one, because it's a much bigger tent, has a much bigger inside. And as you can see, it has the netting on the roof so that you could take the rain fly off if you wanted to, but it also allows the breeze to come in. And then the windows don't zip completely closed. It leaves the top portion open, and you can unzip sides or all the way. But that's what this tent looks like. And as you can tell, that took us much longer to put up than the Insta tent. And that's all there is to that. Thank you girls for joining us. Bye.